To me, true wealth is getting to that point where your passive income is far exceeds your fixed expenses and life becomes so much richer. And you've got the time to focus on really what's the most important thing in life, your relationships.
Welcome to the Wealth Strategy Secrets of the Ultra Wealthy podcast, where we help entrepreneurs like you exponentially build wealth through passive income to live a life of freedom and prosperity. Are you tired of paying too much in taxes, gambling your future on the stock market, and want to learn about hidden strategies for making your money work for you? And now your host, Dave Wolcott, serial entrepreneur and author of the best-selling book, The Holistic Wealth Strategy.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome to another episode on Wealth Strategy Secrets. Today we are joined by Mark Podolsky, aka the Land Geek, who's also the owner of Frontier Properties and has years of experience as the go-to expert for investing in undeveloped land within the U.S. I think Mark is going to definitely provide some insights for those of you looking for alternative passive income streams, looking to really free up your time by having some, alternative assets in your portfolio, and frankly, potentially create a side hustle that could really scale. So I think you're going to find this one interesting and look forward to the chat with Mark. So Mark, welcome to the show.
Dave Wolcott, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. And we, Mark and I just learned we're actually both strategic coach and Genius Network members, which is super cool. So have some alignment in terms of values and philosophy and kind of where we're headed. But why don't you tell the audience who isn't familiar with you, tell us a little bit about your background and how the heck did you get into land flipping in the first place?
Yeah. So if we rewind the tape to 2000, I was a miserable, micromanaged, 45-minute commute to work and back investment banker, specializing in mergers and acquisitions with private equity groups. And Dave, it got so bad for me, I wouldn't get the Sunday blues, anticipating Monday coming around. I'd get the Friday blues, anticipating the weekend going by really fast and having to be back at work on Monday. So my firm hires this guy. He's telling me that as a side hustle, he's buying up raw land, pennies on the dollar. He's flipping them online and he's making a 300% return on his investment. And Dave, I'm looking at companies all day long. And a great company, has 15% EBITDA margins or free cash flow. Average company's 10%. I'm looking at companies all day long, less than 10%. So of course, I don't believe him. So I've got $3,000 saved up for car repairs. I go to New Mexico with him. I do exactly what he tells me to do. I buy 10 half-acre parcels, an average price of $300 each. I flipped them online and they all sell for an average price of $1,200 each, 300%. It worked. So I took all that money and went to another auction. This is in Arizona where I live. And again, it's 2000. There's no one in the room. And I'm buying lots and acreage for nothing. And I flip all that land and I made over $90,000 cash. So I go to my wife. I said, honey, I'm going to quit my job and become a full-time land investor. And she said, absolutely not. She was pregnant. So I said, okay. So it took 18 months for the land investing income to exceed the investment banking income. And I quit. I've been doing it ever since. I've done over 6,000 transactions and counting now. And I still absolutely love it.
Yeah, that's so cool. What a leap, right? To make that leap and really, kind of follow your passion right into, getting into land flipping full time, especially coming from investment banking. It's like that was quite a career path that you really, had to veer right off of. Right. So what was so compelling about that to you? Was it the fact that you could double your money so quickly? What was it that was really driving you?
What was really driving me is coming from looking at companies all day long and understanding markets, was that this was an inefficient market. And it was massive. And it still is massive and it's still inefficient. I remember doing a back of the napkin calculation in year 2. And I said, this is unsustainable, these margins. And I said, at the end of the day, if all this would happen and all these people come in, we're looking still at a 30% gross margin business, which is a really good business. And you're talking about an asset you don't have to maintain, you don't have to protect, you can't be destroyed. And so there were a lot of things that were really compelling to me about it. And to this day, it's still that way. And there's just not that many inefficient markets left.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So why don't we unpack what is land flipping anyway? I'm sure there's a lot of people in the audience who haven't really heard about your model. So why don't you kind of take us through the basics of, how it works, right?
Yeah. Let's use you, Dave, as a case study. So let's assume you own 5 acres of raw land. And where do you live?
In Florida.
You live in Florida. Okay, but I'm going to assume that
Yeah.
you own the 5 acres of raw land where I live in Arizona. And you owe $200 in back taxes. So you're essentially advertising 2 important things to me. Number one, you have no emotional attachment to the raw land. You're in Florida, the property's in Arizona. Number two, you're financially distressed in some weird way because when we don't pay for things like our property taxes, we don't value them in the same way. And as a result, the county treasurer keeps sending you notices saying, Dave, if you don't pay your property taxes, you're going to lose that property to a tax deed or a tax lien investor. So all I'm going to do is look at your 5-acre parcel and I'm going to analyze the last 12 to 18 months of comparable sales. I'm going to take the lowest comparable sale and divide by 4. And that's what Warren Buffett would call a 300% margin of safety. So I'm going to send an actual offer to you for your 5-acre parcel. So just using easy math, let's say the lowest comparable sale is $10,000. I send you an offer of $2,500. You accept it. Why? Because for you, $2,500 is better than nothing. In reality, 3 to 5% of people are going to accept my quote unquote top dollar offer. But now that you've accepted it, I have to go through due diligence or in-depth research. I have to confirm you still own the property. I have to confirm that the back taxes are only $200. I have to make sure there's been no breaks in the chain of title, no liens or encumbrances. And so because it's such an inexpensive purchase, it's less than $5,000, I'll actually outsource that to my team in Jamaica. It costs about $11. They are connected to an American title company. Now, if it was more than $5,000, I wouldn't take any title risk, and I would just close traditionally through an American title company. But this is only $2,500, so we'll do our own due diligence. And while we're doing our due diligence, we're actually creating our own marketing piece because I'm getting the aerial maps, I'm getting the plat maps, I'm getting the satellite maps. I'm finding out what are the roads like, how far from the nearest services. I might have somebody local go out there for $50 and shoot video, maybe take a drone out there, take pictures. I want to know what the neighbors are doing. And so 98% of the time, everything checks out in due diligence. These typically don't have really long, complicated chains of title as well. So everything checks out. I'm going to send you a check for $2,300. I'm going to send the treasurer a check for $200. I own it free and clear. And now I'm going to flip it and I'm going to make it cash flow like a rental home. So Dave, I have a built-in best buyer. Do you know who it is?
Me?
Yeah. No, you sold it to me. You're not going to buy it back.
Okay.
Any other guesses?
The other people in your network
That's a good guess.
that are looking?
They're really good. They're probably the second best buyer. The best buyer are the neighbors. So I'm going to send out neighbor letters saying, hey, here's your opportunity. Protect your views, protect your privacy, know your neighbors. The neighbors pass, I will go to my buyers list. The buyers list passes, I'll go to a website you may have heard of. It's called Craigslist. It's the 15th most trafficked website in the United States. I'll go to one I know you've heard of called Meta, where the buy-sell groups and the marketplace. And then I'll go to the lands, landmodo.com, land.com, landandfarm.com, landsamerica.com, landflip.com, landhub.com, landcentury.com. These are all platforms where people buy and sell raw land. But the secret is in the pricing. I'm going to make it irresistible. So all I'm going to ask for is a $2,500 down payment for someone else to control that 5-acre parcel. And then I'll make it a car payment. Let's say $297 a month and 9% interest for the next 84 months. So I got a one-time sale of $2,500. And now I get my money out on the down payment. And now I'm getting $297 a month for the next 84 months and 9% interest. Dave, no renters, no rehabs, no renovations, no rodents. And because I'm not dealing with the tenant, I'm exempt from Dodd-Frank, RESPA, and the SAFE Act, all this onerous real estate legislation. So then it's a simple game. can we create enough land notes where our passive income now exceeds our fixed expenses, and we're working because we want to, not because we have to.
Yeah, interesting. What's the average transaction size?
It depends, average transaction size. So I'd say right now we're probably averaging maybe $7,500. It's very, very inexpensive.
Okay. So I think it's interesting, right? Because there's some leveling going on. We have a lot of sophisticated listeners on the show, right, who are very advanced in terms of, their portfolio, their knowledge, right? So, sometimes they're looking for larger size transactions to do that. So are you able to actually also group these transactions together?
So what we'll do is, let's say I'm working with an investor, right? And so, the minimum is about $150,000. So we can deploy that right away. We're on average deploying about $400,000 to $500,000 a month into raw land. Now, what we'll typically look for to deploy large amounts of capital is we'll look for note portfolios, which will bring us the passive income right away. We'll buy that at a discount, and we'll also buy larger parcels that we can subdivide. And so, we just did a $1,600 deal in Tennessee. It's a multi-million-dollar deal. Now we're doing the roads and the power. So typically we're doing small transactions, but at volume as well.
Got it. And do you guys cross over into land entitlement at all?
No.
Separate. Yeah.
That's a completely different model. It's a slower model.
Yeah.
And so for velocity of money, we don't do the land entitlement.
Got it. And are there any tax benefits in investing in raw land?
Yeah, there's no depreciation in raw land. Now, you could do a cost seg analysis, and whatever God didn't put there, you could take some depreciation. It's a little bit more advanced strategy. But typically, there is not a tax benefit in raw land unless you're going to invest through a self-directed vehicle, and then you can get these huge returns tax-free in a Roth or tax-deferred in a SEP.
Yeah, got it. So it's either a cash flow play or appreciation growth. That is what you're looking for.
I think we're really more a cash flow play than we are an appreciation play.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What is the average hold period as well?
We want to hold it 30 days or less. We just want to make that land cash flow. Yeah. We don't want that passive income. Now we'll get cash hits, but typically we'll take that cash and we'll redeploy it into more land.
Yeah. And can you talk to us a little bit more about, let's just talk some real metrics, right? So if you put out 100 offers, right? I mean, typically what's the uptake that
right.
you get on those?
So about 3 to 5 will respond, and for every 100 offers, we'll do one deal.
Okay. Got it. And what about the market right now? Has it become more saturated? I've heard of more and more people doing this over the past few years. Are there still opportunities, or, how does the market look from your vantage point?
I mean, the market's right now really great. There are more people doing it, but I think it just validates the market more. So imagine if 10 years ago, I sent you an offer on your 5-acre parcel. That might have been the only offer you got. But now you might get 4 offers in the mail, all in the same price range, validating to you, oh, this is what my land is now worth. And so at some point in time, it's a little bit easier to get that sale. So as far as the market's concerned, I mean, there's billions of acres of raw land available. There's no big money in it. There's no private equity groups. There's no hedge funds. They have too much money to be in this niche. And so we're like in this little Goldilocks niche where you have too little money, it's a problem, but you have too much money, it's a problem. And so I think there could be 1 million people in this niche, which you couldn't think of a more boring real estate niche, right? It's not like you go to the HGTV network or the DIY network and see, flip this land. The before picture's raw land, the after picture's raw land. So I think everybody will run out of money before they run out of deal flow.
Yeah. So, where we are in the economic cycle, do you foresee any, impact, any fluctuations in the land market given?
No, the way we look at the economic cycle is at any point in the cycle, it's going to be a great time to buy. Everything's on sale and we have patient capital. So we're still going to get our returns as we rebalance the portfolio, rebalance the pricing to that that current economic climate.
Mm-hmm.
Then we have equilibrium, where it's easy to buy and it's easy to sell. And then we have a hot market where it's harder to buy, but they fly off the shelf. I would say we're more on the equilibrium side right now.
What if everything you thought you knew about investing was wrong? Would you like to create a wealth strategy like the top 1% have and get exclusive access to top private equity deals that provide downside protection, tax efficiency, predictable cash flow, and have a lucrative upside? Discover how with the Pantheon Advantage and join our investor club today at pantheoninvest.com.
Interesting. And so what is
I'd say in certain markets, I mean, like where you're at in Florida, it's a little hotter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I could see that. And what does your model look like, Mark, right? How are you helping people do this? Are you doing, training, education? Do you have a fund? Do you,
Yeah.
What does your model actually look like if someone wanted to, partake and get involved?
Yeah. So I help everyone along the economic spectrum. So if you have more money or you have more time than money, we have free training all the way up to one-on-one coaching. So we have do it yourself, we have done with you, and we have done for you. So if you have more money than time, then we have a fund and we have a done for you program. If you're at a W-2 job, you want to create enough passive income to exceed your fixed expenses and quit that job, we have training for you as well, so you could do it yourself. So we help rich people become wealthy, and we help people who are what I call solo economic dependency, which means that they're not personally working, they're not making any money, get out of that and create more financial security, and allow themselves the freedom to work when they want, where they want, and with whom they want.
What would you say is the biggest risk in investing in land like this?
I think the biggest risk is not knowing what you're doing, because we make our money on the buy. And so if you're not educated and you don't understand your market and you don't understand the numbers, then it's a risk. I think there's also environmental risk if you go into the wrong market. So we avoid East Coast. I don't want to be in any industrial areas, say Ohio or New Jersey, where I could be buying in a Superfund site, and now I'm liable for millions of dollars of cleanup. Now you can go to a website called epa.gov to determine where those Superfund sites are and avoid them. But generally speaking, you want to be in the Southwest, a little bit in the Northwest, California, Florida, and a little bit in the Midwest are going to be your best markets. Lots of inexpensive raw land.
Yeah. I always like to think of myself, not only as the buyer, but as a seller, and really think about the transaction, right? 360 degrees. And it's actually bringing up a scenario for us. My wife was gifted in her father's estate plan a piece of property in upstate New York. And to your point, she's like, oh yeah, here's another tax bill that we keep getting every year. And he's literally, they've had the property like over 30 years and just keep paying the tax bill on it.
Right. So what was once an asset is now a liability, and I would buy that from you, and you would be thrilled to get it off your hands.
Take it off my hands. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Huh. Yeah. Very interesting. So I can definitely see that connection or the impetus, right, for a seller, a motivated seller, or, to your point of having the neighbors, who are adjacent to you, it's like, okay, if you buy that land, maybe, your property's bigger, there's not going to be a development on it, and probably increase the overall value, right, of your existing, if it's a single family residence or something like that. So, and it probably a decent price point as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah,
we make land affordable for everybody. If you got a job, you can afford our land.
Right. And have you started to incorporate AI into any of the work? Because I can imagine this type of work is tons of different data, following up with different offers. I mean, it seems very data intensive and lots of follow-up. Or are you doing that more with outsourcing today?
Yeah, we outsource a lot of our work with virtual assistants. And so we also have two software programs that we own, geekpay.io, that is a set and forget it payment system. And so we collect our notes on an automated basis like that. And then we have a program called lgpass.com, which manages our whole business and automates our mailings. So from an AI perspective, our developers are using AI to code so they can do, twice as much work in the same amount of time using, ChatGPT, which is really good at coding. And then I would say from a marketing perspective, we've got some really good prompts to help us with headlines and copy as well. So it's certainly a really good intern, but I wouldn't ship their work without somebody looking at it.
Yeah, it's just massive, the potential and the different applications that are going on right now. I mean, with tons of tools being introduced really on a daily basis. It's really eye-opening to see that. What do you think, Mark? I mean, being involved in many top-level entrepreneurial and mastermind groups, what have you really learned over the past decade in terms of really elevating your game, the power of connection? What has that really meant for you?
Well, I mean, I think that there's true wisdom in that Jim Rohn quote. You're the average of the 5 people you hang out with the most. And so when you start hanging out with people who are ahead of you in so many ways, or you can start looking at different businesses and see these blue ocean strategies where you can incorporate, what this entrepreneur is doing over here in a completely different industry, and what that entrepreneur is doing over here in a different industry. It forces you to just think differently. And really, I think ultimately, if you're the type of person that joins these mastermind groups, you're already the type of person that wants to work on being the best version of yourself. And there's no top of the mountain for those types of people. Like, it's just the journey. You never get to the top. And I think it's deeply rewarding and deeply fulfilling to not just take the information, but also then to give and serve other people and help them in this sort of mutually beneficial way. And then, there's always the connections where, you just find someone that you genuinely just like because they're an entrepreneur just like you. And it's, you kind of have to be a little crazy with an entrepreneur. So to be with these like-minded people, it's amazing. I love this Nassim Taleb quote. It's like, if you know why you're friends with someone, you're not friends with them. And so ultimately, when you get to a point, it's like you just want to help people, and then people help you. Joe Polish is always saying, "Life gives to the giver," and I think it's true.
Right, right. And Zig Ziglar's famous quote, right? If you help enough people get what they want, then you'll get what you want. But it's interesting, and I'd like to get your take on this as well. Is transitioning really from investment banking and that corporate and that Wall Street type philosophy. I mean, it took me a lot of years and a lot of learning and scars, right, to break free from that corporate mold, what's all ingrained in us. And, I think from a wealth perspective, it's the same thing. I mean, even, going back to high school days, right? I mean, the 401k is relatively new, but that's all people talk about that's what investing is investing in the stock market, put everything in the 401k, things in 529 plans for your kids. And then, have someone who's smarter than you, right, run the whole thing. But I think it takes a lot of courage for people to break out of that mold and say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go invest in land flipping, because you're going to be the one at the family dinner table that, people are going to look at you with 3 heads and say, what the hell are you doing? It sounds really risky. So I think there's, a big paradigm shift that people really need to make before they start, investing in alternative assets, and even really looking at passive income theory as well.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that it is that mindset shift, and there's that great Robert Kiyosaki book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. I mean, just really outlines that you want to buy assets and not liabilities, and ultimately, no one's going to care more about your money and your life than you. And so I think the antidote to financial insecurity is passive income and cash flow, where if I put $1 million in the stock market, well, I'll feel good one day, and I'm going to feel terrible the next day. And I'm going to go through. I'm never going to feel secure, as opposed to, okay, if I can cash flow this much per month, and I can get to 200% above that. So even if there's a massive swing, I still have all my fixed expenses taken care of. Well, now I'm living my best life. I mean, in the life cycle, when you're young, you've got time and you've got energy, but you have no money. In middle age, you've got money and energy, but you have no time. And then when we get older, we've got money and we've got time, but we have no energy. So I feel like passive income gives you that trifecta in the peak of your life, which is so insultingly short. Like, that's what we want. And we want that freedom. We want that autonomy. And that's, to me, true wealth is getting to that point where your passive income is far exceeds your fixed expenses, and you just, life becomes so much richer, and you've got the time to focus on really what's the most important thing in life, your relationships, right? I mean, I was at a Genius Network meeting, and there was a great line by Frank Ostasekki, the guy that was owned Zen Hospice, and he sat with 2,500 people, and on their deathbed they asked themselves two questions: did I love, and was I loved? That's it. So how are you going to get to that point where your true wealth is having that time, not just your money problem solved? Lots of people can solve that, but money and time problem solved, so that you can focus on the most important things in your life.
Yeah, I really love that, Mark. It's so spot on with our, philosophy around holistic wealth, and it's all about values and things. And I think, again, it's tough for people out there, right? That we're living under an antiquated paradigm, right? Because there is still this societal norm that we retire at age 65, right? And then, so all of the financial planning models, right, are built around that. And they do the Monte Carlo simulation, and then you're going to start to kill your golden goose at 65 and take out 4% or less, kind of a year. But it's interesting, right? Because we're talking about passive income and having cash flow. Well, retirement is really cash flow at age 65. But if we can bring it, to what you said, if you can get there at age 35 or 45, even earlier, and you have that cash flow and you've covered that financial security layer on Maslow's hierarchy, then wow, life can just be so much more enriching with the relationships, all of these other things where you can truly add value and just kind of, move that away. But I know it is really hard, to break that mold that everyone around you is kind of forcing you into that.
No, absolutely. And that's where, listening to a podcast like yours really helps people broaden their perspectives. Because if you're just spending all day listening to CNBC, right, or you're just online and you're clicking on, some type of Kiplinger or Motley Fool article, the algorithm keeps feeding you that. And you keep getting more of what you click on. And so you never really expand and see, oh my gosh, there's all these alternative investments. There's this whole world out there that could be solving my problems. And you don't even see it. And then if you're not breaking out and joining some other, mastermind groups as well, and you're the average of the 5 people you're spending the most time with, and they're in that world too, you're never going to see it. And even now, there's so many tax strategies I'm just now learning. There's so many different things out there. It's just, I never was exposed to it. And
yeah,
it's crazy. I mean, I was at a strategic coach meeting, and this woman was like, do you know what the Dutch sandwich is? I'm like, I have no idea what a Dutch sandwich is. And I mean, it's like, oh yeah, this is what Google and Apple do, and in investing in Europe and Ireland and moving, their wealth around, so they paid no tax. It's crazy.
Yeah. No, and knowledge, right? And actually Joe says that, right, is knowledge plus action is really true power. Right. So, educating yourself is so key to understand what's even possible. Right. And then, aligning yourself with the right group of people and taking action, on these things wherever you are on the journey. And then it just completely snowballs, right? And, you hit that point of your expenses, your passive income exceeding your expenses. And it's just like, you make decisions differently in your
100%.
life, right? Which is so powerful, all the things. And I think you have a deeper sense of what's really important to you, right? Because you're not in the grind all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. You get to a point where like you want to transcend money. I forgot who said this, but like, I just want a fit body, a calm mind, a house full of love. And I can get all those things, but money as a tool helps me accelerate all of those things because I now have the time and the resources to devote to it, right? I can get a personal trainer. I can, go on meditation retreats and work on that. I can, create incredible vacation experiences with my family and work on those relationships in a variety of ways that if you don't have the resources to do it, you're just stressed out all the time. What do couples fight about the most, right? Money, sex, and the kids, right? But, we can't help with the other two, but if we can eliminate that big bucket of stress called money, it does ripple out. I think it can affect every area of their life.
Absolutely. So what do you think listeners can do if you were able to give just one piece of advice on how they could accelerate their own wealth trajectory? What would it be?
Just keep listening to podcasts like yours and getting educated and figuring out what resonates with them. And so you want to learn, and then you want to launch, take action, and then hopefully it moves the needle. But oftentimes people think, I'm just going to do what my buddy does. And they don't really spend the time to think about what's best for them and their values, and then learn about it and then test it.
Yeah, love it. Mark, I really appreciate your time coming on and educating our audience today. It's really a new, insightful strategy, one which I think a lot of people haven't really heard of before, and appreciate you offering a gift to listeners today. And if they want to capitalize on that, what is the best connection?
Yeah, so I've got a link to our free book called Dirt Rich. Tells my story and then gives an overview, like we talked about today, in more detail about the land business. And they can get that. They just have to pay for the shipping. For those people who are accredited investors, they can reach me directly if they're more interested in a done-for-you type of approach as well, and to learn more about that and have myself and my team just do it for them.
Excellent. Really appreciate it, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate you.
All right, guys, thanks for tuning in and look forward to talking to you next week. Until then.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Wealth Strategy Secrets. If you'd like to get a free copy of the book, go to holisticwealthstrategy.com. That's holisticwealthstrategy.com. If you'd like to learn more about upcoming opportunities at Pantheon, please visit pantheoninvest.com. That's pantheoninvest.com.